There it is, 6 o'clock. Good minute. Thank you. On that, we'll call to order. We'll call to order the study session for Cherry Hills Village. This is Tuesday, August 3rd. On the study session agenda is a presentation on the open space sales and use tax, and we have the honor of having Commissioner Nancy Sharp here. So you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Nice to be here. And this is Michelle Halstead. For those of you that don't know her, she's the director of our commissioner's office, and so she's going to help me if I forget something or don't know something. So, but I'm also going to probably rely on the mayor because if there's anybody that knows our open spaces, it's your mayor, and we really have appreciated your serving, and you're at all of these events on our Open Space Trails Advisory Board, and it's a very busy board and even busier this year, and so we really appreciate all the work that you do, and it's great to see you when we go to some of these this is the fun part of, there's so many other things, as I know we all know, that are not as much fun. Open space is really one of those. So we'll go ahead and get started. And next slide. So I think probably many of you all are aware, but the primary things that Open Spaces does are build and maintain our trails, and I'm going to get into in a few minutes how much in the miles of trails that this program has enhanced or built. Enhancing neighborhood and regional parks, preserving natural and heritage areas, and we have 2 heritage areas in the county. One is our fairgrounds, and hopefully some of you all might have gotten out to the fair this, I guess it was a week or so ago, and but also 17 Mile House, and that's at Broncos Parkway and Parker. And it's a great place too if you're ever over there. It's a great heritage area. So those are the 2. So this is the slide where 70 miles of trails built or improved, 168 park trailheads, heritage areas, and we have done quite a bit out at the fairgrounds in terms of adding trails, and it's a great area, not built up as much. There's a lot of residential, but right around the fairgrounds, it's a great area. 31,000 acres of open space conserved, and some of that, about 5,000 acres, the county actually owns, but the rest is under conservation easements. So there are ranchers and farmers that still use that land, but it can't be developed going forward, which is a real plus. And in terms of maintenance, it helps the county as well because they continue to maintain the property even though the county owns it. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick summary of the program was first voted on in 2003. And so our first year of sales tax was 2004. And so in those years, almost $360 million has been collected to support the open space, our open spaces across the county. And you can see the share back, which is 50% shared back with the cities, and that's based on population. And then there are grants and joint projects. And one of the things that we realized in the last couple of years is that some of the joint projects were very large ones. And so we didn't initially start out in 2004 with large grants. And now we've got a couple that are $500,000, so we can actually undertake large projects now with the cities. And some of the, you'll see total awarded was almost $257 million, but some of it is actually spoken for, but the projects have not been kind of completed. So next slide. And I will stop at the end, but if you've got any questions, please just let me know and I will stop at any point. So this is where Cherry Hills, this is the funding that Cherry Hills has received. And I say this to Cherry Hills, and I say this to Glendale, and I say this to Greenwood Village. When you're a smaller city in population size, the money coming back in the share back is quite small. So what I really advocated for a number of years ago was to try and bring up that amount that is given back to the smaller cities through grants and joint projects. And I think that's an important one to know as well. Next slide. So these are just a couple of the projects that you all will know quite well. The Mead Park is one, which I think is a great park. And then the one we just celebrated, which is the Hampton, Colorado pedestrian underpass, which was quite a challenge getting that actually completed, but it is amazing. If you have not had a chance to go over and actually see it, it truly is, from a safety standpoint, and access to trails, people not having to go over a very busy roadway is really important. And that's something that in the future, a lot of the open space dollars are going to be focused on, or a lot of these trail connections that cross busy streets. As our population grows in Arapahoe County, that becomes even more important. And we always look for projects where we can leverage our dollars. And over Arapahoe Road, almost to Parker, CDOT was rebuilding part of Arapahoe Road, and the Cherry Creek runs under, kind of by Valley Country Club, runs underneath Arapahoe Road there. And it was the trail, Cherry Creek goes underneath there, but the trail wasn't extended. So we were able to use open space dollars to put in a trailhead and to build that underpass when they were doing the road as well. So it was a win-win, and it took people safely on from the south side to the north side, or vice versa, and more people could go into the Cherry Creek State Park riding their bike all the way from Douglas County into the Cherry Creek. So I think those are the kinds of things that you're going to see county-wide that are going to be more important as time goes on. Okay, next slide. So this is just the process that we're going through. This is part of the process, and this sales tax, which is, we had one reauthorization in 2011, and we like to go a little bit, since it doesn't really expire until 2023, go out a little bit ahead, a couple of years ahead, and part of the process, just in case, I don't think it's going to happen, because I think this is a 1/4 cent sales tax. It's a very small sales tax, and very much appreciated across the county. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. We're going to talk about polling in a minute, and I'll show you it's very favorable polling, but we just like to hedge our bets a little bit. And if we hear something when we go out this year that we didn't anticipate, I don't think that's going to happen, but we have another year or two to go back out to the community. So as I said, the mayor serves on our Open Space Trails Advisory Board, and I always, OSTAB, it's easier for me to say that. There are 7 members, and I think one of the important things for everybody to know is when we go out and this sales tax, the resolution cannot be changed. There are many things in the resolution, and once we vote on it, which I'm thinking our board will vote here in the next week or two, on whether to put this on the ballot, I would encourage people to read the resolution. But it is, everything in there can't be changed, and we have to abide by that. And one of the things is this OSTAB board. It's a 7-member board. We have 5 districts in Arapahoe County, and so there's a representative from each one of the districts plus 2 additional members. And I think that gives us the representation across the county. And the board members, and again, Mayor, you can talk about, but reviewing all of the projects and making sure that they meet the letter of the resolution. And we have almost a 20-year history, and we have had, in my mind, one issue where it was a park district, and we got a little, they were doing some things, and we ended up working it out completely with them. But in all the, almost $360 million that's been spent in many dozens and dozens of projects, and that was resolved in the way it should have been. And we are working with them, again. So I think that's a great, I think it says a lot, because anytime you've got a sales tax, citizens are paying attention to how their money is spent, and particularly when the money is as sizable as this. So I think that's a real testament to the board and to our staff. And the other thing I just wanted to mention here, and I can talk about it again, but every year there's an annual audit of the projects. So when a community or a park district or a special district applies for a special project, for example, or in share back, we want to make sure that the money was spent in the way that it was outlined in the grant request, or the money, even just the share back money, that it was spent according to the resolution. And so that's subject to an annual audit. And I think those are really important things for the future. So we've been doing all these things, ongoing education programs, meeting with city councils, and we have 3 meetings tonight. We're just one of them, which I would be remiss if I didn't say Commissioner Warren Gully. Sorry she couldn't be here. She's doing another presentation. And I got the long straw. I got to come here and be with you all. So thank you for having me. And so, as I said, I think it's on our agenda next week to vote. But we are anxious to hear, and we'll have a few minutes to see what you all think. So next slide. So this is what the proposal is. No change to the municipal share back. No change to the grant formula or eligibility. There are 2 changes. The third bullet is probably one of the biggest, and it's and the other one, the fourth one down, is going to be really important, I think, to you all. But recommend making the tax permanent, and again, that's why I mentioned the accountability. And the Open Space Board, Trails Advisory Board, that is in the resolution, so it can't be done away with. Board of County Commissioners can't say, oh, well, we want to do this. Money cannot be spent on roads or anything else that we may all have needs for in the future. Can't be done. And nothing can be changed in the resolution unless it comes back to the vote of the people again to change it. The fourth bullet there is one that I think is really important to communities that are more landlocked. So you may not have as opportunity to purchase land as much open space, but of what you have, it's going to continue to cost to maintain it over time. And I think that's why we wanted to add more flexibility. We did a little bit the last resolution, or the last renewal, and we wanted to, again, add that flexibility so that communities where maintenance was becoming more and more of an issue, to be able to work with the county on how those numbers could be increased. And there's an IGA that each municipality signs with the county, and that's where it's discussed and negotiated. And that can be changed. So in terms of making this permanent, I don't think any of us know 30 years from now what the needs are going to be, but there's always an opportunity to come back and talk about the needs in your city particularly, or any other municipality. And so that's where we are with, my guess is that our board will vote to put it on the November ballot. And next slide. So this is just a little bit, we did some polling just to see, what the pulse of individuals were across the county, and particularly around some of the permanent issue. And more than 3/4 initially said they would vote yes on the ballot. And I think, Michelle, maybe you can, I'm trying to remember here, but we did come back and ask if this tax was made permanent, would that impact your vote? And I'm trying to remember, it was less than 10, yeah. So most people said, it isn't that particular issue is not going to make a difference. We like the tax. We want to support it. We like what's done with it in our communities and across the county. And so we are, so while there may be a few votes that would be lost on that, it wasn't substantial. And I will say that the numbers from the last time, when we had this reauthorization the last time in 2011, we did a poll then, and I think our numbers were definitely supporting, and what's 78 now was about 63 or 64%. And I think that's kind of a testament of the times that we've been in the last year and a half, when people couldn't be indoors. They got outside and they used what we all celebrate, I think, all the time and love about living in Colorado, our open spaces and our trails. And so I think there was a lot more usage. I think the Highline Canal had 70% more usage than they had the year before. It was phenomenal how people wanted to get out and felt safer being outside during some really difficult times. So I think that was is something we saw with this polling, recognized in this polling. Okay, next slide. And these are, I can hardly read these even with my glasses on, but these are just some of what the voters discussed, why they like the open space, what it does for them. And I think quality of life is something we value here, and certainly something that these individuals who responded, and you can kind of see some of the reasons: love the use of the outdoors and good use of taxpayer dollars. I know in the past I've been to meetings over the years, and people loved the fact that we have trail connections. They moved here from other places, and it wasn't as high a priority as we give it here. And I think you all are probably aware that we have done, we did a open space master plan, and part of that was looking to see how not just unincorporated Arapahoe County, but how the whole county can be connected, and reached out to citizens and all of our municipalities to see how we could connect the trails, for example, in Cherry Hills, to Greenwood Village, to Littleton or Englewood, or all the way over to the Platte, so and east. So I think those are the kinds of things. So there's been a significant investment in the Highline Canal, in the Cherry Creek Reservoir, and in the Platte over the years, millions of dollars to improve the trails and clean up the Platte, which was, well, some places were actually not too nice to, like sofas and chairs and things all along the Platte River, and so that's been cleaned up and a lot of improvements made. Next slide. So this is the point where I get to ask you all what you think, and if you have any comments or questions for us. And as I said, we'll be deciding in the next week or so if we move this forward. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from council? Any questions? Dan?
Thank you, Commissioner Sharp. Nice to see you. I've had the opportunity to work with Arapahoe County Open Spaces years ago, and the staff and the board back then, and doing a great job. So thank you and your team for the efforts. You said that the increase in the city funding is one thing that we might benefit from. I didn't see anywhere on here that you showed what that increase might be. Is that, and then I thought I also heard you say maybe it comes in the form of each IGA, which each individual city. So
Right.
is that up for negotiation with each individual
Yes.
incorporated city within the county?
What we're looking at, yes, there's a standard amount, and I'm trying to remember do I have that little, yeah.
So-
I don't have our little,
So as Commissioner Sharp mentioned, we do the share back, and as part of that share back, there's an intergovernmental agreement that identifies how the money gets used and spent. So we have about 20% historically has been kind of the ceiling of how much you could spend towards maintenance in that IGA. And the goal here would be flexibility potentially above that 20% to be negotiated. So as your maintenance needs grow, you can increase the amount of those share back funds that go back to maintenance.
Okay. Thank you. And what can we do to help? How can we help you? If you guys decide to put it on the ballot, I assume getting out and us talking to our own constituents is the best thing we can do for you.
absolutely. I think we all know that we can't support one way or the other a ballot initiative with our city or county funds, but I do think that individual efforts and talking with neighbors and friends and I, as I've suggested to a couple of other cities, just putting in a newsletter what this open space sales tax has done doesn't mean you vote for it or not, but it tells your community where the money has been invested. And so they can see that, and if that works for, I'm not an attorney, but I think that could, that could work too. But any help, and we are going to be separate from any county involvement, but we are putting together a citizen group to go ahead to, try to reach out to the community. Obviously, there's going to be some fundraising that'll need to be done.
Great.
So
Thank you for your work
if you're
on this.
interested,
Appreciate
I know where
it.
to reach you.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Sharp, are there caps to grants and joint projects that each city would hit?
Yeah, there are, I think, two, if I'm right, and that Mayor, two large, like $500,000 grants.
$500,000.
And then
large
some
grants.
of them are a couple of $100,000. Some are planning grants that are quite small.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a cap, though, to the summation of those?
Well, this year we had like a 4.5 million in requests for grants, and we were able to dole out 4 million. So there is each year. It's a percentage basis, so we take all the grants that come, and we do look at which municipalities are getting it and try to be fair about, and making sure that everybody is covered, and encourage those who aren't applying for grants to apply for them as well. So yeah, so that's we're limited every year by the percentage, but that's That's how we start every year when we do the grant. That's different from the share back, which just comes automatically to us.
Yeah.
And that the share back number is an important number, and I was advocate for that as well, because there are some communities like Cherry Hills Village and Glendale, we don't have a lot of open space to acquire anymore, right?
That's right.
But we do have parks that we need to maintain, and so we could really use that, for instance, to free up and use for maintenance of the Highline Canal eventually. So that's the reason for this, and the reason that the MOU is to be flexible for each community and not be limited to the 20% and force us to spend 80% on open space when we don't really have that, or open space or parks when we don't really need that. So anyway, that's or that we can spend it on maintenance, so it really helps backfill our.
Yeah, I think it does, sometimes we'll get, sometimes we'll actually get, we'll have X amount of money to spend, and all of the grants will qualify because they have to be eligible and meet all the criteria and that kind of thing. And sometimes we'll be able to fund all of them, and as I said, some are planning grants, they can be quite small. And then sometimes, we'll just have to say, we can't quite get to it this year, but apply again next year. And I think the I'm hesitant to always use equity, but I think the fairness between communities on what the projects are and is always a consideration. And to see how much a city with a much larger population may have more ability to do a lot of things, because they'll get a substantially greater amount of money to do those things. So I think that is always something that that I think is important, particularly for our smaller communities. And I think even out we've got Bennett, Byers, Deer Trail. They're very small. And
This is really important for those communities. They really rely on all of this. We have a couple more minutes. Quickly.
So I had one quick question, but just to make sure, I think, Mike, to your point, I don't think there's any set number. It's written down, the maximum you can ever receive is X or Y.
Well, I'm just
But-
thinking of Emily,
Yeah.
as Emily's penning away, that she's got hope.
I know, yeah.
Get these things.
Yeah, I think that's, as they said, they try to keep it fair. So my question is whether or not you have any data about how the ballot initiatives, the 2 times that they've appeared in the past, fared in Cherry Hills Village. My suspicion is that they passed comfortably here.
we can get that to
Yeah.
you.
I think that would just be an interesting data point
would
for us
be.
as well. Open space is always near and dear to a lot of residents in Cherry Hills, and so I would suspect that it passed easily, but I would be curious to know.
Yeah, I remember for the county as a whole, it was strongest in the western sections than it was in the east. You kind of believe, but yeah, I don't think I ever saw Cherry Hills Village particularly.
But we,
Countywide in 11, it was 65%.
yeah. But we can find that, we do track that information, so we can find that out. And I apologize about it. Some of the projects are 300,000 and some of them are 75,000, so.
And they're all matched, right? So,
Yeah.
and we don't do more than 50% match. So, and the more matched you are, the better chance you have of winning. So, but like Aurora, I think we approved $4 million total, but they had $2 million in match. So, yeah, for this year. So, yeah.
I agree. I think the match is another important thing, because it just really does show that the community is invested and that's a major project, because they're wanting to invest their dollars as well and into the project, and as opposed to just something that's paid 100% by the county.
All right, thank you very much. Unless there are questions, Commissioner Ashman, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, again, thank you for Commissioner. And if if you have any form of, again, anything that we can post on our own social media or Facebook or Instagram and so on to promote this, please send it our way.
Right.
That would be great.
Do that. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
if anybody would like to be involved in that. I think you can all find me. I'm easy to find, and, but thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Sharp, very much. Well, I have 6:30 now, so we can roll directly into the regular meeting of council. This Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. This is the regular meeting. There is a sign up, yes, for anyone wishing to speak. And we can do a roll call.
Counselor Safavi?
Here.
Counselor Wheel?
Happy to be here.
Counselor Brown?
Here?
Counselor Gallagher?
Here.
Counselor Sheldon?
Here.
Counselor Blum?
Here.
Okay, if we could all rise for the pledge. Okay, first up is audience participation. And we have Linda Bear and the subject Quincy Farm, and you're welcome. You have 5 minutes, and should know, Linda, we're not going to act on Quincy Farm tonight, but you're certainly welcome to comment on it.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the time, City Council and Mayor Stewart. So, like many people in the village, I received an email yesterday that talked about, do you want to give away 26% of your public open space in Cherry Hills Village? So I've spoken to a number of City Council people today about this topic, and, you know, and Dan and I talked, and as he pointed out, I mean, we've been talking about this for, you know, Kat Anderson was gracious enough to, I think, donate the land, Quincy Farms, to us after her death in 2016. Anyway, and so I just wanted to speak about this because I am very, very, very concerned about the proposal, you know, that has been presented to the City Council, and based upon that proposal, I just wanted to speak to all of you and ask you to, you know, some questions. And is this something where I can expect any answers back, or just have to state my opinion?
This is just for you to riff. And,
Okay, to riff. Okay, good. All right, I will riff. So based upon this email, and what it talked about was Natalie Anderson, who I'm sure is a wonderful person and a relative granddaughter, I believe, of Kat Anderson, proposed that the family be given back the land, Quincy Farms, to her family so she could maintain it, take care of it under the conservation easement requirements, of course, et cetera. And then we have the Cherry Hills Land Preserve, who would like to maintain that Quincy Farm within Cherry Hills Village as it was given to the village and to the people of the village, of which I'm one. So I've been a Cherry Hills Village resident for 36 years, and to me, Quincy Farm is a jewel. I mean, it's a beautiful, precious commodity and property that we are proud to have had the opportunity of Kat Anderson giving us this as a donation to our beautiful Cherry Hills Village. And I guess I just want to say, who would in their right mind would ever think of giving this property back to Natalie Anderson and her family? And not because I don't think they're wonderful, gracious people, and et cetera, but I think that if Kat Anderson wanted Natalie Anderson and her family to have the property, she would have put it in her will and given them the property. But in fact, Kat Anderson, without knowing her wishes, so I'm going to not get down that rabbit hole, but I'm going to say that with her litany of attorneys putting together this conservation easement, giving her a life estate, giving two of her friends a lease on the property, one of which is still living there, and that she gave a lot of thought and consideration to this donation. And in contrast to what she wanted, the city, and I've been told by a couple of neighbors that Mayor Stewart was in favor of it going to Natalie Anderson. And so I'm just curious as to why that would ever happen. So as a real estate broker also, and a Cherry Hills Village resident, the land, the property, Quincy Farms, is an extremely valuable asset to the village. Just listening to this woman prior to me talking about needing funds and trying to take care of the Highline Canal and other areas, this property is worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I don't understand why the city would give it back to a family that Kat decided would not receive it at her death, but in fact it would come to our city. So I also wanted to reference, there was a conservation easement established in Greenwood Village. There was a woman, Ma Duke, which I'm sure a number of you know, and she had 19 acres in Greenwood Village. And it was purchased in 2017. And when it was marketed much too high. It was like 10 million something. And it ended up selling for $4.5 million. It could only out of the 19 plus acres, you could only build on 2.5 acres, at which the family who bought it paid 4.5, and they could only put one home in one spot of the entire property, and it back to the Highline Canal. So to me, the city, if nothing else, if they want to give it away, just give it to me. I'll give you $2 million today, and I'll write you a check this week. It makes no sense. As a villager, I want to keep the property. I want to do everything in my power to help the city raise money to take care of the property. But there are things in the conservation easement that says that you can actually, if we can't maintain the property, we have a couple of options. The western part of Quincy Farms has the big house on it. If it's not possible, it does say that you're not allowed to add on to it or make it bigger. But it does say that if you need to, you can, not that I would want this, but you could tear the property down, and you could then, make the land look beautiful and have it as a huge park for the neighbors. There are certain things you could do in the conservation easement that none of us would want to have happen, but if the city's complaint is that they can't maintain it for that reason, I just don't get it. And there's a huge, huge amount of money if the city wanted to gift it to somebody or give it to someone, that they could put it on an open market and let other villagers potentially buy it and let them maintain it, and they would get money for that asset, which I, again, am not recommending, but to give it away just doesn't make sense. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you. And this is just the start of the process, and you're welcome to contact council members and contact me. I'd be happy to chat with you.
Oh, I will. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Do we have anybody else wanting? If you could just come up and give us your name and address. Yes. Right up here. You need the microphone. If you could speak into the microphone, that would.
I'm Becky Bennis. I'm an east neighbor of Quincy Farm. I also have been on the Quincy Farm Committee. I would just like to say, there's a lot of misinformation going around. There's no way that the conservation can be broken. There's no way that that can be broken. It is always going to be Colorado Open Land Conservancy. I would just like to say I'm very much in favor of it because Natalie and the Anderson family will maintain the buildings. Those are historic buildings. For them to be torn down would be terrible, would be absolutely terrible. As I said, I've lived for 41 years as an eastern neighbor. I live right across from the pond. And we would like it to go back to the Anderson family. I didn't intend to speak today. I'm not prepared, but I would just like to say there's a lot of misinformation. Okay.
Thank you, Becky. Appreciate it. Okay. Moving on to reports, I think we kind of have a dearth of audience tonight, so can't be any reports, I don't think, unless anybody knows of any. Consent agenda, item 6.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's approved. Unfinished business, item 8A, Council Bill 7, Series 2021, amending the 2021 budget and approving a supplemental appropriation in the General Fund and Parks and Recreation Fund for additional employee cost of living and merit increases and employee tuition reimbursement. This is the second and final reading. That'll be,
I'm sorry, I'm in the corner.
sorry, Jessica.
My apologies, I'm in the corner tonight. Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Council Bill 7, Series 2021 would increase general fund expenditures by $18,378 and Parks and Recreation Fund expenditures by $3,273. The proposed expenditures are for cost of living and merit increases for eligible staff, along with increased tuition reimbursement. There have been no changes to the council bill since the first reading that was held on July 20th, so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
I move to approve Council Bill 7, Series 2021, a bill for an ordinance of the City of Cherry Hills Village, amending the 2021 budget and approving a supplemental appropriation in the General Fund and the Parks and Recreation Fund for additional employee cost of living and merit increases and employee tuition reimbursement on second and final reading.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call.
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Before I actually vote, I know it was said before, I just want to reiterate how well-deserved this is and how much we appreciate all that our staff has done for us, particularly in this difficult year. And with that said, I vote yes.
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
A very strong yes.
That passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 8B, which is Council Bill 8, Series 2021, amending the budget for fiscal year 2021 by creating the American Rescue Plan Act Fund, allocating funds there too. Second and final reading. Jessica?
Good evening again. Before you tonight is Council Bill 8, Series 2021, amending the budget for fiscal year 2021 by creating the American Rescue Plan Act Fund on second and final reading. There have been no changes to this council bill since the first reading, so again, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I move to approve Council Bill 8, Series 2021, amending the budget for the fiscal year 2021 by creating the American Rescue Plan Act Fund and allocating the funds thereto on second and final reading.
Second.
Motion is second. I have one question for staff. How much money do we have in there now? What is it? Do we know? Is it 750,000? Is that the whole, half? Half of 1/6? So
Yeah, it's we got almost 1.7 million total, so it was about just over $800,000 that we got this year.
And where are we on, like, looking at the options? Any idea of timing of what we might be able to?
Well, the first step is to have the final ruling about what we're eligible to use it for. But, I think we are hoping to start that discussion with council through our budget process.
Okay.
There have been no decisions on that?
There's been comment periods and feedback periods, but the final ruling has not come down yet.
Did I hear you have some optimism that we might be able to use it for broadband?
Optimism, I would rephrase it slightly. I think that is still an option that could be possible. Optimistic, I'm not sure about that. I think we got a fighter's chance. How does that
Saying
sound?
there's a chance.
Give us hope. Give us hope. All right. Any other questions? Okay, I'll take over. Just a roll call vote, please, Laura.
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon?
Yes.
Counselor Blum?
Yes.
All right. Next issue is action, not an item for action, but just a discussion, I guess, on the Quincy Farm thing. And I'm not sure if anybody has any ideas of. Oh, are we have a presentation on it?
Yes, I'm going to do a quick little
Excellent.
set the table for you.
Okay, thank you.
Because I think we are hoping for some input at least so that we can start trying to work on a process in relation to the Quincy Farm proposals that we received. So just as a bit of background real quick, council obviously and the public knows that we did a request for proposals for management and maintenance of the Quincy Farm property. The city did receive 2 proposals, council might recall that when we first started this process, there was a discussion, I think staff asked what kind of process council would like to use after the window closed. And the determination was made at that time, let's see what we get, let's see how many we get, from whom, before we decide what that process is. So now that we know what we've received, here we are, and I think it's a good time for us to discuss what that process should be. I would like to note for the record, and anybody else who might be watching this on YouTube, this discussion tonight is simply about the process to evaluate the merits at a future point. We are not here to discuss the merits of the proposal tonight. It's just, instead, how do we go about discussing those merits in the future? So tonight is not necessarily to get into the details of each proposal. Council might recall a couple weeks ago, I just outlined some ideas for council to consider, but they are in no way exhaustive, about some steps in the process and how council might go about executing those steps. Some tasks that I think would be pretty commonly accepted as good tasks to do include presentations by proposers, a question and answer session between council and those proposers, a discussion amongst council. But that's just what I would call the basics. I think there's opportunities for additional steps or steps or tasks to include for council. Go ahead. So that's the steps that we would take. Then how do we go about taking those steps? I threw out a few ideas, but these were in no way intended to be exhaustive. One is to do what we've done with some other projects, like the master plan selection process, where 2 council members sit on a committee with staff, and you go through that process, and that then gets brought back to council. That's probably, I don't necessarily have a positive recommendation for a single solution. Instead, I probably have just a recommendation that we don't utilize this particular option. From a staff perspective, this one creates a lot of challenges for this project. And I can get into that if you need me to answer why. The second idea that we threw out was we could do a lot of those tasks that I just mentioned on the last slide on regular council evenings, either as a study session or maybe we have a regularly scheduled council meeting and we sort of clear the decks on other agenda items. And you could have discussions and presentations from both parties on the same night. We could also, if we wanted to have other items and not have this be the only thing, we could have a proposer on one night and then 2 weeks later the other proposer with Q&A. So there's some options there, but the idea is on option, or idea 2, is that you could perform those all during our Tuesday night meetings. Another option is you could have a special meeting at another time during the day, another night, whatever it might be, but that you would schedule a meeting just for the express purpose of having a discussion, a study session, and hearing from proposers and doing those tasks on a separate meeting basis. Staff is certainly able to support and help make any one of these options available to you, but we also recognize that there may be other options that you have in mind that might also be better than these two, certainly. And so we're willing to do whatever council would think would be the most effective way to go through this process. We can support any of these. So with that, I turn it back over to council for discussion.
Well, Councilor Gallagher had a suggestion too that I thought you might want to share with council to lead off. Site visit.
Yeah, I think it's important for all of us to, in combination what we've just discussed here, obviously having a question and answer presentation in chambers, actually get out there and really, and we have to make it a public event. But a lot of us, like I have not been on the west side of that Quincy Farm in over a year. I mean, it just has not been open to us. And I think it would give us a nice opportunity to be able to exchange, ask genuine questions, see what's going on there, and be able to point and go, what are your thoughts, as we worked through it.
Chris?
And just to clarify, Councilor Geiger, you're in essence referencing sort of doing a walking tour with each proposer.
Yes.
So in essence, 2 different walking tours.
Yeah, I was trying to think, as I was, I don't want to monopolize this, but trying to make, how can you be fair to these two groups? And one of the neat I was thinking, well, okay, they're both going to come in here, both going to give presentations. We're going to have questions and answers, and we do the same thing out there. And maybe from a timing standpoint, first one that goes here, it goes second out there, and just flip, and just try and make it as equitable as possible.
Mike, I like that idea, but let me ask you this. Logistically, sometimes it's hard when you're having their site discussions. How are you going to capture the discussion? Is there a note taker that's going to be on site? So I'm all for it. But I think logistically, and especially all we need is if it's open to the public, there are going to be a lot of side discussions. And I mean, we got to come up with some sets of rules of engagement if we're going to do this on site. So I'm all for it, but let's think through it.
I'm thinking that if we sequence these into having the presentations first, let the public come listen to those, there's probably going to be fewer people who want to be on site when we're out there, doing that as well. So maybe that would be the answer. And my other suggestion is I think at night is better, because I don't think during the day there are people who just can't make it. So I think I would probably do it at night. I'm open for a study session. I think that's probably good. I like the idea of having a study session where we're saying we want to listen to you, but we're not going to make a decision. We just want to hear the two presenters, and then we want to be able to ask questions. And I'm not sure at that time that I'd like the audience to ask questions or be involved, other than just to watch. But then have another meeting where where all the community then come in and give their comments. I'm just brainstorming, thinking about what might work best. Yeah.
So you're thinking maybe at least three more, right? Then three more with each, right? One in possibly a study session or special meeting whereby the proposer is presenting to this council. A second where either the second could be out in the field, and then the third be the Q&A with the public.
Public comment.
Or you switch the public comment to be number 2, and then the on-site field meeting number 3. Either way, but
Either way.
I like that. I think the goal to hammer home here. I think we've all maybe received some phone calls in the last few days. I think we need to keep remembering that this has got to be an open, transparent public process. We want to have as many opportunities for our public to come and at least listen, if not speak at each one of them, at least listen. And really, frankly, if we can figure out a way to get them able to speak at each of these, my experience is that those that are most vocal are usually a very small minority of people, and they come out really loud, and that's what we hear a lot of. But I would encourage, if anyone is listening tonight or watching tonight, come to these future meetings if you haven't made your voices heard, because we need to hear feedback. When we get calls as council members saying, I can't believe I'm hearing that the city is thinking about giving away or deeding or transferring management responsibilities or doing these things to this great gift we got, I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate that a resident decided to pick up the phone and call me to discuss it, but there's a year and a half of backstory that goes along with it that resident doesn't have the knowledge that everyone in this room has right now, that we've all sat through all that testimony and discussion about. So if we can somehow capture that through our residents, I know it's hard. I know we've done open houses and we've had the stickies and we've done all the different things that we've been trying to do to try to collect public input. But
I like the fact that we're now videotaped and we can do these presentations, and then everybody can then go onto YouTube
and post
watch
them
it.
and keep them up for a
That,
period of time.
that I think is a huge step
Great
forward.
idea, Mayor.
So then, everybody say, well, what did they say about that? Well, watch the video. Here's the presentation, and
Yes.
these questions were answered then. I like that. So
If I could throw a completely different wrench in the works. I feel that a couple things. I'm going to say unequivocally that the most important thing is that we hear from the residents of Cherry Hills Village. Because I think throughout this process, even in the past 8 years, the number of voices that we have heard has been very small. But I also don't want to discount the people who have shown up to those things and the input that they have already given. I think there's nothing more frustrating as a resident to feel like you have to be vigilant and you have to be on constant watch, because the minute you don't show up is the minute they're gonna, so I don't want there to be any of that. And, I'm gonna be, I given this a lot of thought. I'm going to be really frank. We have talked and talked and talked and had presentations and had input we have talked. It is time, in my opinion, for this body to act. I have said it before and I'll say it again. I am not in support of transferring ownership of any open space. I've said that in relation to trails. I've said that in relation to Quincy Farm. I've said that in relation to other things. So personally, and I know this is probably not the majority opinion, but personally, I don't need any more information about any proposal of which transfer of ownership that's a deal breaker for me. I don't want to waste the proposer's time. I don't want to waste any more of anybody's time if that's a deal breaker. Now, I've gotten the impression through previous discussions that maybe that's not, but that's where I am on that issue. The other concern I have about this approach is that it sends a message to our community that these are the only two options. And we have said from day one that we don't have to choose either of these. Remember that there was a plan under development by the Quincy Farm Committee, and it had its issues. Maybe they could be worked out, maybe they couldn't. And there are even other options that other people have mentioned about, just letting it be open space or just letting. So I don't want, this kind of feels to me like pick from one of these two. And that's not what it is. And if we're going to have 3 more meetings and, all of these concerned citizens who've now shown up to 10 different input meetings now have to show up to 6 more, I just think that's a lot to ask. I would be all in favor of some sort of different outreach program, whatever that might be. I know we talked about a survey for a while. I'd be all in. I think I have a pretty good idea of what the 30 people who've been involved, I think I know how they feel. I understand their feedback and their comments. I'd like to hear from the other 6,000 people in Cherry Hills Village, or some percentage of them. So I am less focused on, coming and presenting to me. I am more interested in, and there were comments that there's misinformation. That may be true. I am much more interested in the citizens of Cherry Hills Village understanding the range of possibilities and providing us feedback in some very timely fashion, because it has just been too long. I know that government works at a very slow pace, but it's been too long. So my proposal would be less around formal presentations that give the opinion that there are only 2 options, and more around some sort of public outreach that we could do in a quick way, and maybe that includes another public meeting of some sort. But that's my feedback, so take it for what it's worth.
Mayor,
Yeah,
if I can address,
Councilman.
I agree with Katie on certain aspects of that. The one thing I do disagree on, I think we owe it, since we did the RFP, for these people to make a presentation. Now, I do agree with Katie as far as transferring title and some real issues. And to me, the way to address that, because I've got very strong feelings on that also, is to do it by questions. I've got a list. I spent the morning going through these proposals. I've got a whole list of questions that I need to get answered. But I think the most important thing, I think Katie raised this, these aren't the only alternatives. There's lots of other alternatives. I guess the question is, how do we communicate that to the 6,000 people that it's not A or B? It could be C or D or whatever that we have not researched yet. I think I've got some notes here that I need to get some questions answered by staff on some other alternatives also. And I think that needs to be communicated. However, and like Dan said, it's got to be a totally open process for our people, for our residents. And the question is, how do we get that communicated to everybody that it's not A or B, it could be something else?
I think, we can do that in the messaging. That's absolutely true. I mean, these are simply proposals, and we can pick and choose. We could say no to all of them. We could say this, or we could go a third way. There's some options here that nobody's, I think, raised yet that we might be good for discussion. So I think all of that is open, but I think that can be in the messaging.
Yeah, it seems to me that it might be a good exercise for the staff to come up with kind of an option 3. I mean, there was a plan and there were activities and expenditures associated with that. And maybe just to get a feel for what it would be if we did nothing, and tried to at least execute and make some progress. I think that would be a good contrast as opposed to two clear alternatives and one that's not as clear. Which wouldn't say that we were limited to those 3, but I think it would give us a point of comparison which may have been missing so far in this process, for me at least anyway. The other thing, I agree 100% that I think the immediate neighbors are energized, and rightfully so, and they have a voice, and we should listen. On the other hand, it's the other 6,000, if you will, that may not even be aware that there's any discussion going on. In my mind, this is probably, if not the biggest, among the bigger asset agenda items that the city's looked at in its 75-year history. So in that sense, I think it merits the time and judgment, but I think inclusion and getting the word out proactively that this is a topic, it is under debate, you have a voice and exercise it. We want your participation in this process. I think it's an element that I'd like to see us embrace as we go forward. And I think that's I agree with the tour. I think that having a PowerPoint slide presentation is great, but there's nothing like walking the property and listening to the dialogue. I went to Mike inspired me, went to a beekeeping session, and honestly, just sitting there for a couple of hours and going through that, and just one activity, I understand, but at the same time, you walk away with a different depth of appreciation and understanding for the place. And if I had done more, I'd probably have more of that. So I think on-site is very important. Okay, that's all I have.
So from when I'm listening to all the conversations, these are the conversation we've been having for the past year or so. I think if you look at some of the previous notes, there was a reason we started saying go with the RFP process, or RFI process, or RFP, whichever it is. And so we didn't know if we were going to get 2 proposals, 1 proposal, 10 proposals. So we had discussions why we want to go ahead and proceed with that process. And at the same time, I respect everyone's opinion as is there option 3, 4, 5, 6? And we do complain about, this has taken too long, but during this, as we've been waiting for these RFIs, well, if there is option 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 10, well, we should have been working on those and getting those. So I'm all open, whatever options that we want to discuss, let's bring it up. I think as somebody said, these 2 potential candidates have put a lot of time and effort to provide to respond to us. We owe it to them, we owe it to the city, we owe it to ourselves to listen to them in the best way possible, give them all the time that they need to present their case. At the same time, we have the right to either take it or not take it. So option 1 and 2, there's a proposal. For most part, I'm clear what they want, but I have a lot of questions. If that means we're going to go sit and, whatever the process is, I'm good with it. If it means, again, going on site, giving the opportunity to present, we ask questions, and the public to provide comments. All that is solid and valid. But again, at the end of it, I'm hoping we're at the point that if there is an option 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6, I want to hear those in a timely fashion. I don't want to go ahead and say, hold these two folks for another 6 months because, well, maybe there might be another option. Well, let's hear it. Let's put it in the PowerPoint presentation and share it with everybody. So if we're complaining about that it has taken for so long, if there are other options, put them on a piece of paper, put them on a PowerPoint and present it, and we can listen to it. So with that being said, you guys know where I stand. I'm eagerly looking forward to listen and understand what these two candidates or what these two proposals are all about. That's all. Back to you.
Is that enough for the city manager, kind of consensus for you all to know?
So, yeah, let me, unless anybody else has anything.
There was one thing that I actually wanted to add that is an underlying concern. And I think, we haven't seen all of the feedback that the city has received, but I understand that you have received comments from people on both sides of the issue. This is going to get people riled up. And this has happened to me in my experience on council twice now so far, where an issue comes up and I say to myself, ooh, this is going to get people riled up. But trust the process. We at least go through the process and let people's voices be heard. And I'll be honest with you, it has backfired on me both times in a big way. The Public Works facility and the roundabout. Both of those ideas, when they came up, my initial internal gut reaction was, oh, I don't know about that. And there is something to be lost from just going through the motions. And it is a cost to our community of potentially divisiveness and animosity. And I'm concerned about that. And so I just want to say it now because I'm really concerned that this is going to pit neighbors against each other and that people are going to get really, it's important to a lot of people on both sides of the issue. So
Let me ask this, Katie. I mean, the alternative is doing nothing. Doesn't matter which way we go, there's always somebody who's gonna not be happy. We have to go through a process. We gotta try to advertise as much as we can. We gotta get people's input. At the end of it, we either do something about it, and yeah, some people are happy, some people are not happy. Hopefully we'll do what is right for our city, for our citizens. And again, there will be happy and unhappy people on both ends. But we got to consciously believe that what we're doing, we gave both candidates and option 3, 4, and 5, and 6 a fair chance and opportunity, and then make our decision. So the alternative, I think, is I'm not sure exactly where you're going with that. It's either we got to go through a process and make a decision, or do nothing. And doing nothing is not.
Yeah, sorry, that wasn't what I was suggesting. What I was suggesting was the message that we are considering giving the property away, if that is really where everyone else is, that message is going to explode. And so my personal opinion, and it has nothing to do with the proposer or even any of the other elements in the proposal. I'm not talking about the merits of any proposal. What I am talking about is that by considering and even saying we're considering giving this property away, and we have no duty, frankly, to either of these proposers. Our duty is to the citizens of Cherry Hills Village. So while it would be polite, they've put a lot of work into it, and it would be polite, but our duty is not to them. I feel that even sending the message that this is a serious consideration, for me it is not, but sending the message that this is a serious consideration of the city is going to create a lot of animosity in our community.
Katie, just let me
Hold on,
follow up.
let's kind of get control.
Let
Okay,
me just
Counselor
follow up on
Blum? Yeah, go ahead.
what Katie said. And I've made my position clear before at council meetings that I cannot see under any circumstance giving up title to the property. Notwithstanding that, I think it's only fair, since we did the RFP, that we listen to both sides. And as far as option, I see a very clear-cut third possibility here, which I think we need to have staff assess and put it out there for the public too. If they're going to look at A and B, I think we need to have C also that's presented from staff. That is a third potential possibility. So we're not locked into any one of these. I do agree with Katie, and I think it's critical, at least from my standpoint, that we never give up title to that property. And that's why I said, and I discussed this with Dan earlier today, I'm more than willing to listen to what the Anderson family says about that. But from my concern is that we do not do that, but I think we need to listen to that. But I agree with Austin on the point that I don't think there's 3, 4, or 5. I think there is a viable third alternative that we need to consider. It's been discussed before with the committee out there. So as far as having the presentations and the steps we want to go through, I'm in favor of all those. I think Mike's got a great idea that we need to be educated also as a council as to what each of these people say out there on site. But as far as it's critical to me that we do allow a third alternative out there that we haven't considered yet.
I think that's fair, completely fair. And I think the answer to this is, look, we have lots of issues, and cities have lots of issues, that we're on a fair and transparent process. Everybody can be heard, and then we take a vote. Then we move on. That's how we do it. But I think we need to be. I agree with the comments that we need to be fair to all the RFP. Everybody, they've spent a lot of time doing this. We need to consider them. There may be things that come up during the presentations that we haven't anticipated. We can't really know that yet. We don't know what all the title issues it might involve. This is a complicated issue, but I think they deserve the time, our time, to listen to their proposals, and I think the citizens in the village deserve to know what's going on, and they deserve a transparent process that fully vetted. I mean, if we're going to have lots of issues that people disagree on, that's okay. That's the way we work, and then we take a vote and we move on. So, Councilor Sheldon?
One other thought about this process and the steps. I just want to make sure if we do, I heard you say maybe a study session, we build one of these 3 meetings or one of the 2 in council chamber meetings into a study session. I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure we all know that we are going to have to build enough time in there, especially to the ones that we're going to open up to public input. If we're going to have the presenters here and theoretically 20 or more residents in the audience and wanting to speak, that we give ourselves probably more than an hour for that meeting.
Yes, I think the city manager has some thoughts. It's easier to hold, we could hold the presentations at a regular session because we can say, hey, it's only 2 hours or something like that, and then done. The public session, who knows how many comes, so that may be a study session that just needs to open up to more time. But thoughts, city manager?
Yeah, so in an effort to synthesize the comments, and sometimes that's easier than other topics, I did hear there did seem to be a fair amount of support for public input. I did hear some consideration for not giving the impression that you must remain diligent and be present for every minute of everything, or else something's going to sneak by you. So try to be respectful of people's time. But there's definitely the number one thing appeared to be public input. There was, I think, an overall agreement on the tour. Definitely overall agreement, and by the way, I agree with this personally completely. The other options and highlighting that these are not the only 2, I think that's spot on. There is a desire, though, to ask questions, to go through the process and hear proposals and ask questions. I know some of you already have your question list building. And a desire to move forward somewhat quickly. So here's a proposal on how we could do this with specific steps. So, and I don't have this on the slide because this evolved based on organically on the conversation tonight. The only people I think who are really going to throw things at me on this are going to be staff. That's right, I go on vacation tomorrow.
And we just approved the salary increase.
So I here, and there's a little bit of my own personal recommendations baked into this. So, you know, if this needs to adapt or change slightly, totally okay. But I think the first step, what I'm hearing, the best first step would be the presentations and a question and answer form. My recommendation is that we clear the decks on a certain night so that you, especially council, does not feel pressure by other agenda items or other business that needs to occur or other people in the audience waiting for their item to be heard. That we have a study session where we clear the decks, we have one presentation, one question and answer, we take a break, and we do it again that night. I think there is a benefit to having them on the same night. It's fresh. Maybe there was something that came up in the first one that spurs your memory on the second. All right, so that would be the first one. So that would be one night for both presentation and question and answer. Then another meeting after that, though, sequentially. So step 2 would be a tour. And that might be 2 separate tours. It might be 2 separate dates, but it's the next step in the sequence. All while that's going on, and they're not looking at me, all while that's going on, staff would be working on fleshing out what additional options could look like. And I'm just going to throw out to you, I actually think there might be 2. They are not going to be sophisticated options. They are not going to, they're going to be what we're going to be able to do. I think one of them is going to be our best effort to flesh out and put numbers on sort of a close approximation of the last version of the committee's master plan. I would call that a high programmed, high cost option. I think there's a 4th option I've heard some council members mention in the past, which is the low cost, low maintenance option, which is, what does it look like for the city? It probably has a lot less public access, but there still could be programming, but it also has far less costs. Let us try and put, and they're just not going to be the most sophisticated numbers ever, but I think we can do a decent job of giving you a picture, a big picture on it. Does that sound, I'm going to look at my staff real quick. Does that sound doable? And I'm envisioning, here's the good news. I'm envisioning being that after the tour, and it's the only thing, or it would be the only Quincy Farm item on a council discussion, either in a study session, probably a study session would be my recommendation. But that would be the only Quincy Farm item that night. So that would be, we would have weeks to put these, to work on this. Then the 4th option, and this is probably the most controversial one, the 4th step in the sequence, would be a night where we advertise it, we get the word out, we do social media, we do it all, and we say this is the night, because now theoretically, all of this has been available for the public, and they've heard the questions, and they've seen the videos, and they've heard the staff fleshing out these other options on options 3 and 4. So they then have the benefit of not sort of providing comment prematurely and going, oh, well, if I would have known they were going to say that, I would have said, I wouldn't have given that feedback. So we set up a night of public input, and we promote it as such. This, if you want your voice to be heard, this is the night. And, I think if we knew that ahead of time, we could then plan accordingly with, the agenda management, with making sure that we've got logistics set up if we receive a large crowd, all those kinds of things. So that would be 4 steps in a sequence that I think does a decent job of synthesizing everyone's different.
I think that captures it. I think that's great. I think that gives the transparency we need. I mean, I understand the desire to move on, but I think we need to be open and do that. I think it's our job to listen and do this.
I've got a little bit of a concern because, like Katie, I lived through and barely survived, the roundabout situation.
Okay.
It was surprising to me that there was almost nobody here when we were talking about it. There was almost nobody here when we made the decision to go forward with it. Once the decision was made, it was like it emptied the neighborhood into the city council meeting. And I would like to try to avoid that. And what I'm worried about is in the structure that you set up, to have the public input as the last step, I think is appropriate, but somewhere in there, it feels to me like we should be saying, heads up, you know, we have these 3 steps, and if you want to make an informed decision, you need to participate. You know, earlier in the game rather than later, because we have all the benefit of hearing all these presentations, maybe a couple of times, and proposals before, and plans, and blah, 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 you know. I don't want it to degenerate into an emotional, lightly informed dialogue in that last session with the, you know, getting the public input.
Because that is the way that that went. It was a proposal, and there was always a public input meeting scheduled, but that got completely lost. It was a done deal. The perception was that it was a done deal. And that is my concern with this as well, that the perception will be that it's a done deal before it ever gets there.
Well,
Maybe
we'll try-
maybe we could add a step 5 then, after the public input, that specifically contemplates council deliberation. You know, communicating, well, A, just being a good process, but also B, it communicates that no decisions have been made. You haven't even begun to deliberate it amongst yourselves yet. You're in your information gathering stage.
That was, we can do our best, but that was exactly,
I understand.
in both of these cases, that was exactly what happened, and it didn't work. That's not the way it worked out. And, you know, both of those situations have caused real damage in our community. So I guess all I would say is there's no point in just going through the motion. Now, if you're not going through the motion, which it sounds like most people aren't, then, you know, then okay. But, you know, as I've said, there's one proposal here that's a total deal breaker for me. And so I will be going through the motions on those. The other details don't matter. But that's me personally, so.
Chris, can we go ahead, Mayor? Look, I think the idea of, again, getting the public hearing first, you know, let's do that, in my opinion. You know, but I think we need to go ahead and come up with the dates for all these 3 or 4 meetings that we are describing. I'm in agreement with the way you described it, but I think the public, they're going to be, I think, twice the public get to just get up there and say whatever they want to say. I mean, they can always do that, but you know, encourage them to, you know, right before we start all the meetings and review and the visits, and then once we have done and completed all the reviews and the presentation and the visits. To me, but I think the key is that we got to go ahead and set those dates, so make sure we're available, and then we got to go ahead and public also know the process that we're adopting to moving forward. So that's all.
I think that's a fair statement. I mean, I would welcome council direction, or, you know, just thoughts, not direction. Council direction
I
on
think-
like date ranges or windows of when you think we could start maybe steps 1 and 2.
Well, Chris, I think one critical item, I liked how you presented this in 4 different steps, but I think the night you do the presentation, or they do, 1 hour, an hour each or whatever, I think at that time, we have to have the alternatives for the high and the low one disclosed and discussed also at the same time. So that people know out there, at least people watching on TV or even if they're here in person, knows that it's not A or B, it could be C or D. And I think we need to have some, talking about timing, we need to have some feedback from staff as to what those are. I know there's been some preliminary work on that, and I think we have to have that disclosed.
Oh, I think that's fair. That just argues for more time, you know, to push it out there. So give us a little more time to do that. I think that's fair too. I understand the need. I just don't want to be hasty. I don't want people coming back and say you're too hasty in this process.
Well,
you know, you took your time. You did a good job. So I think pushing it out there is fine. If it's up to staff, maybe the thing to do is to ask, you to come to us with kind of proposal. Here's what works for us staff, because you're the ones who are
Yeah.
most constrained.
For the-
And then
for-
suggest one, and if we can do that some way without violating the Open Meetings Act, some way of looking at procedures. If we can call it procedure now, maybe we can actually do that by email. I'll leave it to our attorney.
I think that it's going to benefit the public, though, for them to hear about these other options, right? So I think maybe what we could do is let us work. Problem is, I'm also going on vacation, if you haven't heard. Let us work on if we moved the options 3 and 4 up to the first step. Let us work on maybe when that might be and how long that might take us. I don't want to put anybody on the spot tonight. I just don't think that's.
I don't
fair.
know that, I don't
So-
know that it matters whether it's the first step or the last, but it ought to be, it seems to me like it should be a proposal that is comparable to the other proposals that says, okay, if we do nothing with respect to these other proposals, that would mean by default, we're running it. And here are the options for running it. Here's the cost implications. Here's how it affects the budget. And if we have to, if it implies a tax increase, well, we should be upfront about that too. I think there should sort of be 3 nights. Maybe we do alternative 3 and 4 in tandem, as variations on a theme, but kind of like if you will, an Anderson night, a land preserve night, and a city night that kind of give us good time and depth to consider the choices that are in front of us.
Randy, I think they need to run concurrently. That's why my
I think the two proposals need to be
Yeah.
the same time. I think that at the same time.
all
But I don't know that the 3 or 4 needs to be the, you think, so?
Well,
It's up to
I
you.
think so, because then whoever's watching say, you look, they got A, B, or C, or D. Full transparency to know that there is an alternative, and these are the potential alternatives. I think you got to do it concurrently.
I'm fine with that. I mean,
Chris,
this is work
which-
for staff. But
But which night do you do it? I mean, do you do it on the Anderson night? Or
I
the-
do it all in one night.
same.
I do it all in one night.
the same night.
One night, do everything.
Oh, yeah.
Same night?
Because
I
then
think
the
it's more
people who
fun.
show up don't have to show up to
Okay.
3 different
Well,
meetings.
and that's okay with me too, if we can do
It's
justice.
a really
if we
long
can-
night.
Yeah, I'm afraid
well,
we might not be able to do
We're,
justice.
we're lucky. We don't have meetings that go to midnight generally, like most cities do, so it's okay.
A real question will
would be
be
half,
how
right?
fast can staff pull it together?
Yeah.
Well, and I think the expensive option, the committee had gotten pretty far on that proposal. So, I'm optimistic that it's not.
Yeah, those numbers can come through. I think it's a great idea. We need a fair hearing on all the budget issues. I mean, we
Yeah.
got to talk about that. That's driving this.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a possibility that the people say, no, we want the expensive option and we're willing to pay for it, or we'd rather,
Yeah.
who knows?
Sure, who
what
knows?
you could hear, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I think also, if you have the 2 folks, the teams that have submitted a proposal, actually hearing the proposal in the room of options, I'm going to call them 3 and 4, it can be very eye-opening. My hope here is that after all this exercise, and I believe it will be, that there is room for improvement for all the proposals. And there are going to be other ideas that everyone will start thinking. And there might be from all of that option 5 coming out. So I think regardless, this will be, a very healthy conversation discussion.
All right, I would like to move on if we can. Does that give you enough direction?
No,
Or-
can I clarify just a couple of things
You bet.
real quick? So I think the specific item of feedback that I'm still not clear on is whether or not we want the option 3 and 4 to go around the same time as we hear from the 2 proposers, or it needs to be before or after.
I think Councilor Blum is same time.
So here's my request then. Why don't we do that option first, the 2, option 3 and 4 first, and then have another night where we hear from the 2 proposers? So that option's already on the table. We lead the night off with a brief summary, right? But I'm worried about a 7-hour meeting with both proposers, both question answers, and our options, because I think there's going to be a lot of questions.
What's the thought of council? Dan?
I think 7-hour meetings unfortunately happen sometimes.
Okay, just,
I think it has to happen the
I
same
think-
night. I hate it, but you're just never going to get the same crossover of people here on the 2 different nights to hear
I
1 and
agree.
2 and 3 and 4 a different
I don't
night.
like, I
And
agree
again,
with
they've
Councilor
already-
Brown. I don't like having people come back for 2 or 3 meetings. if we
And they've
can do it
already
all at
been
once.
to
Yeah.
however
Yeah.
many. So, and I think that we can accomplish a little bit of that by keeping the presentation. You know, these proposals have been out, they've been on the website, we've all read them. I think the presentation component can be shorter than maybe perhaps we've
Okay.
been
And we can say,
discussing
hey,
and leave it
you
more
have,
for
you have this
questions.
much time for
30
your
minutes or whatever.
presentation, boom, and then the rest for questions.
so how does September 21st sound to everyone? What, no? That's no good? I'm hearing, wait, hold on.
September 21st. What? That's a Tuesday.
We're not going to do much. Well, for our proposals, though. Who approved that? Anyway. The problem is
It's really your call as to whether.
I just hate
put
to
a
make it go
quality
too much.
quality presentation together by then. I mean, I'll be here.
So the first meeting in October has some heavy lifting. There's a trail vacation that's going that night that will definitely take a while, and a rezoning. So that first meeting in October is no good.
Well, you know, but.
19th?
The other side of that is, we've, you know, we're in the beginning of August, and now if we're talking later October, that's sounding like it's quite a ways off. You know,
Let's-
does this September, can we make this September?
21st work? Can we
21
do? Do
works?
we need-
Okay,
can
so
you-
we will
yeah.
do September 21st.
Can you do a good job?
Miss Black.
We'll get some
Is
content
that
going.
are you hunting, Jay? Or is that you? Oh, it's you. Oh, sorry.
So we will plan on reaching out to both proposers, doing a presentation, maybe 30 minutes, Q&A as well. We'll probably lead the night off with the options 3 and 4, which now are options 1 and 2, I guess. And then we'll move on to the Q&A or the presentations and Q&A from the proposers. We will then also start working, and we will probably do this more offline, Laura, maybe with trying to work with your agendas and the 2 proposers on the tours. I don't think we need to decide that tonight. We can work with you all offline on that. We will still notice it. It will still be available with the public.
Right.
Apparently, we will buy a drone to videotape it so that we have all conversations recorded. No, I'm kidding. But we may want to record it. We may want to have an iPhone out, just something.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think we'll know better about setting a night for public input. I know there's some concern with how that's formatted, but maybe because of the way we've presented it beforehand, it lessens that. It just might also come with the territory. So
Well, and I guess the other element that needs to be fleshed out is how we are going to communicate this. Again, if we really just end up with the people that we've already been hearing from the past 3 years, I will consider that a failure.
So I do think there's an option if we do it on the 21st, that we have time to get it in the crier, which will definitely go beyond the normal communication channels that exist currently with Quincy Farm.
Yard signs.
Yep,
We can get yard signs made, put them in our rights of way.
Yeah, that's.
And again, I harken back. It'll be on video, YouTube, so we can. Everybody who can't make it that night, they can watch it, and that'll be good.
Even just to make them aware that it's available to watch. I mean, I think the yard signs,
So we will.
the whole enchilada.
Chris, can we at the 75th plus 1 anniversary have some flyers, something that, hey,
Sure. That sounds like a great idea.
please join us for a 7-hour meeting?
Want to spend 7 hours with city council? Have we got a
But you
date
cannot
for
bring
you?
your own drink, so because we discussed that.
Let me
Nothing
make
more
sure-
fun.
Let me
All
make
right.
sure I understand the first session is basically the presenters, and then.
And us too.
Question. Well, I'm considering you guys the third presenter of the.
Well,
Of the alternative.
Just to manage expectations, the information we're going to be providing is not It is not going to be a proposal per se. It is going to be some programming and what that might cost on an annual, and then with some capital costs associated with that. I would not call this, we're not responding to the RFP.
Yeah, I think it would be very helpful to have that numbers information in our head when we're talking, when we're listening to the other presenters.
So now on this presentation night, is that only council would be asking presenters questions? There would be no public input?
Yes, that would be my suggestion, because otherwise it'll just devolve into audience all asking all kinds of questions. I think this is for us to listen and for the audience to listen
And
to
clarifying
hear what the
questions,
presentations are. Later, we can let them open it up to their comments and as much as they want.
Later as in that same night?
As a different night.
Different night. And by the way, I would recommend that night be the presentations and the question and answer, so that it's question and answer and Robert Rules of Order aren't quite the same, that we make that a study session.
Right.
And it's going to be a study session that goes well past the 6:30 timeframe.
Right.
I disagree about not having the public have the ability to speak that night. I think we'll have people in the room that are throwing their arms up, muzzling themselves, and I think we almost have. I think we have to.
If you want to,
That's why I said sometimes there are 7-hour meetings. I think that's what it counts for.
We can have the comment after, then everybody's done their presentation.
Yeah, but I don't think they should be allowed to ask
I don't know
questions
the
to the
format.
presenters.
I'm not
That I
gonna-
agree with, but I think
I'm
you're
not going to
right.
debate the format. I just think I think that's wrong of us to not ask the public for their input on those presentations.
While it's fresh in their mind and whatever. Yeah, but not asking, the only people who ask questions of the presenters are
Agreed.
us.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so we went from 3 meetings to 1 meeting. Well, there's the second step altogether, but that was
one
the
long
second step
meeting.
no matter what.
It's okay.
So,
That's all right. We didn't have a July meeting anyway, so.
there you go.
I do think, Russell raised a great point, though. It should be 30 minutes, got the lights, red light, get the hook, that sort of thing. And I think similarly on the comments, we should provide some instruction that, don't repeat something that's already been said.
Yep.
Yeah, we could even limit it. We usually have 5, we could go down to 3.
Could
I
go
could
to
say
3,
3,
absolutely.
that's more reasonable, really. I think that's, well, I don't want to limit council members. I don't think 5 minutes is enough. No way. All right.
Again, you
I
guys
could
would just
read
be
you this
asking
before
questions. You're
we'll-
not deliberating that night.
We'll be good.
You're just asking questions that night. That would not be the night for deliberation. Yeah.
Just so I heard this right, you said you don't envision the public asking questions of the proposers. So the public comment that we're talking about having them engage in would be after the presentations, after council has asked questions of the proposers, after we've closed all that up, then we will open it up to public comment, not public questions, but public comment.
Correct. That's my plan.
Thank you.
I think that works. I think that's a good plan. All right. Any other thoughts? Or I think we have a plan. We have a date. We have a.
The only thing, Mayor, I would say, what Dan just mentioned, the way we're going to, the process, how it's going to work out. I think that's important for the public to know as they're coming in. Because,
We'll tell them again to say, now you get to say something at this September 21st, and that'll fill the room. So, okay. All right. We have a plan. Thank you, Council. Those great comments and great planning. Move on to reports. Briefly, Chris and I met with the commissioners and managers and mayors last Friday. There was an interesting thing from John Douglas was there speaking about the Delta virus and things, and they're following the CDC recommendations basically, but they're going to recommend masks. So they aren't going to mandate any masking. They're going to recommend if our levels get high enough that everybody, including vaccinated people, wear masks indoors. So far, I don't know what the number is or when they're going to let us know or how that's going to happen. But anyway, they're following the CDC recommendation. The one interesting thing that I thought he made was a question from Mayor Lance. He said, well, would you tell us how many people are actually immune, right? How many people have been vaccinated plus have actually had it already? And he said he thinks it is up to 80%, if I heard right. That,
Not the combination of the two.
no, if you, or, either or. So you add together those who've been vaccinated and those who've already had it, you're up to 80%, which is good. I mean, you're starting to approach herd immunity. Although, if this is really much more infectious, who knows? Or, but and they were saying that the infections of those who have, obviously the vaccines were never 100% effective. They're always only 90 or 80% effective. So there's always going to be some breakthroughs, and so that's what's happening. But those breakthroughs haven't been serious hospitalizations, and they said the hospitalizations are not a problem now. So we'll see, and that's what I think they should be focusing on. I don't know anything else. If Chris remember anything else out of that meeting? Oh, there was Mayor Kaufman there, just so everybody's aware. Kind of spoke up and said he wasn't completely comfortable with the ballot proposal that put unlimited time on the tax. He said. And then he said some things like Aurora doesn't get back as much as we pay in, which actually was not true. Because I think those numbers, he's given some bad information. I think ultimately, I'm not sure where it'll come out. The commissioner is going to talk to him, but I think it'll probably be presented. They're going to vote next Tuesday, and I'll be there at the commissioners meeting when they're going to vote on the language for actually to go ahead. So in that time, they can decide. I don't think it makes any difference. I think it's going to pass overwhelmingly. And even if they put 10 years on it or 20 years on it, in 10 years, it's going to pass again because it's just so popular. So, and I think one of the commissioners said, hey, this is the only time I'll ever vote for not having a sunset on it. This is so different. This is the one tax because everybody loves this tax, and it's what we use to make our parks nice, right? It's what they use to. This is one tax where people can say, I really can see what my tax dollars are going for because I got a new tennis courts or gun parks. So I think that's the way it's going. I think they'll say we'll just do it a permanent. It'll be a regular tax without a sunset provision, but it could change over the weekend. I'm not sure. Then we had on the first we went to you had Colorado Day. Highline Conservancy had the Colorado Day Walk and Trail, and Mayor Kaufman was there. Mayor Pico and. Kendra Black was there from Denver, and Councilor Gallagher was there too. And so it was good event, really nice. I mean, the Highline, they've got kudos to the Highline Conservancy. They've got an agreement now with all the jurisdictions. I mean, you know how hard that is to do, to get all jurisdictions to agree to one document with all the redlining and everything that went through that. So it's done. That's now all going ahead, and all of those meetings, I assume, will start being scheduled with the technical committee, with the policy committee, and everything else for the Highline Canal. So it was a nice day, and they lucked out, and they had great weather. They also have a really nice facility there. You should go and visit. The Highline Conservancy offices are there at the old ditch rider's house where the ditch rider used to be, and they converted it. It's beautiful, and they have this 20 acres or something. It's just gorgeous. Yeah, it's right there on Orchard by the Highline Canal, just on the west side of the Highline Canal and Orchard. Yeah, it's you should get an excuse to visit Harriet and take a look because it's a really nice area they have. Metro Mayor's Caucus, I think they went back to Zoom because of Delta, and I'll go to that by Zoom tomorrow. And just we mentioned already Art in the Park is having its thing. Did you get I sent in my reservation. I'm coming. That's August 26th fundraiser here, and then of course the 75th anniversary celebration. 75th plus 1 is on the 28th. That's my report. Councilor Plum.
No report, but just thinking about we're told about the taxes could be used for maintenance for open space. I see some dollars coming to help maintain Quincy Farm. That's my comment.
No comment, but I would like to know if we have an update on the undergrounding.
We do.
If you want to do that now, or when you get back to
we can do that now.
Staff reports.
Sure. So I did watch the last meeting, so I understood what your questions were. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but we have, as a staff, been working with XL. We continually are on top of them because they won't call us and say, here's why we're not here today. We're calling them. So we have actually met with XL 3 different times in the last 4 months. And they actually had the gall to ask us where we thought they should put it at the last meeting. We offered them the entire right-of-way, both north and south of Quincy, under the trail, in the street, wherever they could put it without making it a dangerous situation for vehicles or people. So we did discuss the option of moving the entire electrical underground to the south side of Quincy. It is a feasible option, but the disturbance, there needs to be more than 20 cuts to take that power back to the north side to give power back to each of the homeowners on that side of the street. If we didn't have to do that, it would just be a straight run out to Happy Canyon. So it's feasible, but it is very time-consuming and would really disturb our residents more than it should. What we have been pushing them on is stacking their wires instead of setting their wires side by side, is going deeper, putting all their wires in a line, and stacking them on top of each other. It makes for harder maintenance. Their engineers are saying it may drop some of the power in the line because the separations would be less and those lines draw off each other, and supposedly that drops the amount of voltage. It's a small percentage. It's not a huge percentage. So that's what we're pushing for right now. That has to be done. They would have to use what they call a hydro trench. Because there are so many utilities in there now, they actually just make a 1 foot wide trench, 15 feet deep, and hydrovac it out and lay their line as they go. So that's what we're hoping for. I have been in contact numerous times in the last month with our government rep. He has been stalling because they don't have an engineering answer yet, but we are trying to get another meeting set up with him here at this facility. So we've asked that we get moved up in the queue on the engineering since this project started all the way back in November, and here we are in July of the next year, and we have no wire in the ground. They have put in all their pull boxes, but they have no trenching to get to those. So we are continuing to push them forward. And on another note, same thing, monthly we have a public works directors meeting of all the public work directors in Arapahoe County. I did miss the last meeting on vacation, but when going through the minutes from that meeting, one of the big issues is Excel challenges. We're not the only community that is not getting responsiveness from Excel. So we're going to talk more as a group of public works directors as to what we can do, how we can come together and try to figure this out. They are having the same issues, that there's no set standard for consistency on how Excel manages their projects, and their responsiveness depends on who you have working with, who's your project manager for Excel. So we're all having the same issues, and hopefully we can come together and see what can be done.
Is the problem communication, or is it engineering and being able to pothole and find the right path on that north side? Because if it's the latter, maybe we should be exploring the south side like you started off talking about. I understand there's saw cuts associated with that. Do those saw cuts bother us enough to continue down the road of having to hydro trench and maybe get it done someday ever? Or do we
they would still need to re-engineer that if they went with that process, so we'd get back in the same loop. The problem, and you know, hindsight's 20/20. Excel always wants to be the first in, but they're always the last to react. We gave them the go-ahead before we gave the other utilities the go-ahead. We specifically told all of them in a meeting, you guys need to coordinate this. Excel has a rule that if you don't have your utilities off of their poles within 30 days after they've undergrounded, they're your poles. So as soon as we told Comcast and as soon as we told CenturyLink it's a go, communication was cut off. They put their stuff in the ground because they don't want to be standing there having responsibility for these poles. So the system is a giant rat's nest. And so we've learned a lot in this project. We didn't have this issue on our undergrounding district that we did before because it timed out that, you know,
Excel came in first and the other ones came in after. But it's creating its own vortex here. We're just, and Excel wants us to go back to the other utilities and ask them to remove their lines so they can put their power in. Well, that's not an option. We had to pay for those out of our own pockets. So, and we don't approve these projects, and we never have. We have the ability to, where we make them design it and give us an exact location where you're going to put that. We don't do that because normally it's a field verification anyhow, because once they get out there and start potholing, the locations are close, but the potholes tell them exactly where everything are. So it's been very frustrating, but we are continuing to push as hard as we can against an entity as big as XL. So
It's a micro step, but we did get a commitment today from Tom Henley, the government liaison, whose role it is to help us, with our issues. He did commit to having their standards folks, their engineers who look at the separation standards and all the other things, try and move that up on their list. We got a commitment from him today to get that new proposal in front of them as quickly as possible. We pressed for a specific date. We didn't get one, but he understands the time delay issue that we've had here. He gets that now, so I'm hopeful that we will get some more traction.
I'm not at all ready to do what I'm about to suggest, but at some point, whether it's 4 or 5 months from now, that'll be 15 months into an undergrounding project that hasn't broken ground yet. Has a little bit, right? We've taken some of the stuff off. But at some point, do we pull the plug on this, so to speak, and just take our $1.1 million or $1.3 million in XL rebate money back and plan for a different project another day?
I think there's some political pressure that we can put on in shorter time than that is a sort of ratcheting that pressure up more before we get to that phase.
I don't want to do that.
Meaning some steps for maybe some council folks to help.
God, if you think that would be helpful, please let us know.
Well, the only thing Excel listens to is PUC. So you have to
What's
go.
that?
This is a PUC. You have to go to the PUC, and their sole source contracting is a disaster. I mean, because it raises our costs hugely, all costs of municipalities, and it's not necessary. And but and we have some former PUC members in Cherry Hills Village, and they'd be willing to. They have advised us on what we need to do, but that's the only thing Excel really listens to.
yeah.
All right, thank you. That's all. By the way, good job on the air conditioning.
Yeah,
No comment.
Councilor Brown.
I just had two quick things. I'm not sure what emails, why I got this email, so you may have all received it or not, but as a heads up, this is a redistricting year in Colorado, and there's a committee that's assigned with doing that, and they're in the process of making presentations around the state. There are 3 coming up near us. I think there's one in Centennial, one in Littleton, and there are somewhat significant changes for us. Namely, we would no longer be in CD1, we'd be in CD6. And our state house districts would all be vastly different. And it would create just some interesting dynamics. That there were some great stories about how that would affect incumbent races, because there would now be some districts where there's 2 incumbents. And some districts where there's no incumbent, just because of the way they happen to fall. So if you're interested in providing any feedback about that, I received an email, and if you didn't get it, let me know, and I'm happy to forward it to you. It has a link when and where all the presentations are occurring. They're open to the public. Also, I'm not sure, this was a while back, but I'm not sure if it ever came up, but the number of airplane noise complaints has started to really tick back up again. I still happen to receive, I'm on one of the emails for the Noise Roundtable. And you may have been aware that the Centennial Airport had filed a lawsuit against the FAA around the whole, and they lost. It was dismissed with saying that they didn't have standing. So that's kind of a bummer. But that was probably a month ago, 2 months ago, maybe even. And, you know, so things seem to be returning to normal, unfortunately, but it was a very peaceful year over the last year.
And there is a complaint line for those noises. I get the same calls, but it's almost invariably, it's the general aviation from Arapahoe County. It is not Denver DIA traffic, because, you know, if you look at that, and they'll let you know when it's coming through.
You know, when I get the reports, and I've looked at them, very rarely is there a complaint from Cherry
Yeah.
Hills.
Well, they don't call that number, they call our numbers. And I give them that number to call.
A lot of people don't know that number
They don't know that
exists,
number.
and you know, the point I always made on the roundtable was, it's because nothing happens. You know, you complain, and they say, thanks so much for your complaint. People stop complaining.
And that also was dismissed based on a lack of standing.
Yeah, it was,
that
the
made no
lawyers
sense.
didn't do a very good job of choosing their plaintiffs to represent them. It was a kind of a fundamental mistake. They lost. I don't know that it had too much merit, too much chance anyway, given what they're up against with the preemption issue. So, I did want to mention, you said something about emails. Everybody has got email, spam emails that are coming from me. Please be careful with those, and check out the address. And if you're not sure, just call me here. Call everybody else too if you get anybody, because what they're fishing for is you replying, and then the next one will be, hey, open this, and then we have a ransomware thing or some kind of ugly stuff. So just be watching out for those. Councilor Wheel?
Thanks. I had been intending to tell you about the employee traffic reduction program. However, about 2 hours before the working session, Dr. Cog, the CDPHE, they withdrew their proposal and decided that after input and talking to various constituent parties, that a voluntary program would be better. So that was that. And that's a little bit of a surprise, but anyway, that's all I have.
No report except two quick questions. Jessica, how many people have registered for the anniversary?
We have about 20 right now.
20?
20 people.
Okay. We expect more, right? Okay. And Chief, last council meeting, I know you were out and Commander was sitting in your place. I brought up an issue. I want to make sure that if we have followed on this or not, and if you haven't, I understand you have been very busy. But the speeding between on Hamden between Colorado and University, it is pretty bad. And I didn't know until a couple of weeks ago that actually, I guess, part of that or half of that street falls under Denver Police. And I think Commander said that he was going to go ahead and coordinate with the Denver Police to start putting some more police there to traffic and control the traffic and probably give away a little bit more tickets like it's done in front of St. Mary's. I just wanted to say if that was done or planning to do that.
So I know that we have been up there working Hamden, but I will double check on the efforts to work with Denver.
Thank you. Sure. Again, I just really worry that every day I see the near miss accidents, and it's just because somebody make a right turn and they see an open road and they're going who knows how fast, and people anyway it is.
Councilor Will,
do you have something? Thank you.
Thanks. Afshin tripped a thought in my mind as well. It seems like also Bellevue has, over the past 5-6 months, escalated more and more. Everything from exhaust brakes, they read the sign, they must not speak English because there's a sign that says don't use exhaust brakes going down the hill, but those are going off all the time, and it seems like there's a fair, what sounds at least, like drag racing up and back and forth on Bellevue. I mean, it's a nice straight shot. It's not got great visibility, but man, I mean, revved up engines and for quite a protracted period of time, acceleration. So that may be another area where we could use a little help, and I recognize that too is split. Half us, half Greenwood Village, but perhaps working with Greenwood Village, because they're getting the same noise on their side of the street, would be helpful.
Right, and I can tell you that I know the motor units for sure have been working Bellevue quite often. I know that Councilor Blum has seen them out there, and you know, as always, we do the best we can with prioritizing quite a few calls for service right now, but I'll make sure that we mention them both. Thank you.
Yeah, and the exhaust brakes, I mean, that's more of a daytime phenomenon, but the racing seems to be at night. Assuming it is racing, but it sure sounds that way. Okay, thanks.
City Manager.
Yeah, I know that we have some directors with some reports, so we'll start with the chief and go down the line, and then I can wrap it up.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So I've got a few things to talk about. The first one is you know, I'm sure the entire city and especially the police department, our condolences go out to the family and friends of the Pepper family who lost their daughter Stacy to the fatal traffic crash that occurred on Monday, July 26th. We're working very diligently. We've made some very good progress with regard to this case. We put it out to, at the beginning, we put it out to law enforcement agencies. We identified a picture that we were confident was the suspect in this case who fled on foot after the wreck. We then put it out to the press. We utilized Crime Stoppers. We had our tip line going, and that led to the identification of the suspect, as you all know, and we put out another press release regarding that suspect, and we obtained an arrest warrant from Arapahoe County for the suspect in the case, Evan Michael Jocelyn. His whereabouts are unknown at this time. We continue to look. We've had different teams out processing a lot of different things with regard to his whereabouts, and you know, we're not about to give up, and we'll continue to move forward. So please keep that family in your hearts and your minds. I would like to commend my staff for what they've gotten done in the last week or so. It's been a tremendous amount of work, a lot of people involved, and then also, as we do quite often, is thank the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office for their assistance with their reconstruction team. Every kind of piece of equipment we could have asked for, they provided for us and continue to help us as we move forward with trying to find this suspect. So, secondly...
Sorry, Chief, can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
We have no reason to believe that that suspect is here in Cherry Hills Village?
No.
No, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, thank you. The second thing is, it's almost 3 years ago when Officer Corey Sack was shot in the line of duty up on Sedgwick with that invasion robbery. The Arapahoe County District Attorney's Office has, they went through a plea offer with the suspect, Angelo Alston, if you remember in this case, and they have come to an agreement, but the sentencing hearing for this is not until October 11th, and he right now looks like will plead guilty to 4 different felony charges regarding that case. And Officer Sack was made aware of that, and he let me know, and then we'll see what happens at sentencing. So that is ongoing, but it looks like that's what's going to occur with that 3 years later. So, want to remind everyone that school is going to start soon. Cherry Hills Elementary will start on the 16th, Kent Denver the 23rd, and St. Mary's Academy on the 30th. Just want to remind everybody that the start times for Cherry Hills Elementary and Kent Denver coincide this year. And we will be working traffic points, you know, at the entrances to both, which starts at about 7:30. But I just want to warn everyone, it's going to be congestion and it's going to be slow. And, you know, just keep that in mind when you're on Quincy Avenue and going up and down University, of course, through our city. And all of the traffic school lights will be functioning and on, and we will be working that. But I just want to remind people as that's coming up because, you know, we all know that school traffic changes a lot of things for a lot of us. So that's coming up.
Oh, one other thing. I don't know if the school let you know that Cherry Hills Village Elementary now on Wednesdays gets out at 1:45 instead of 2:45.
You know, I will bring that up with my SRO.
Every Wednesday
Thank
is
you.
1:45.
Okay.
That's good.
And then we have had a few things going on in the PD, but we have a couple more. I've gotten a retirement notice from one of our officers who will be leaving us. Bob Burnett will be leaving us after 5 years of service in September. So we have started up the process to find a new police officer. And then our property and evidence technician, Paul McCarthy, has tendered his resignation to take on a new job with a local business that's growing quite quickly that has to do with building police cars, really, for lack of a better thing. They get the car and then they completely outfit it. And we actually use this company. So we will never get rid of Paul totally, I don't think, which is a good thing for us. But so 2 major hiring processes going on also in the midst of kind of a busy season for us. But again, I'd like to commend my staff, and we'll just keep moving forward and we'll get it all done.
So are you replacing, what level? Is it an entry-level officer or what you're looking for?
Yes, yes.
For both, well,
Sworn police officer, one position for a sworn police officer, and the other one is for a property and evidence technician. That's a civilian position, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
I've got nothing further.
I have no report tonight.
So I want to just follow up a little bit on what the mayor talked about with the Highline Canal Collaborative process that's going to be coming before you. It is going to be a MOU that, again, it was a Herculean task to get all the jurisdictions to agree on the same MOU. It's not a series of individual MOUs per jurisdiction. It's the same one. They are still wrapping up a couple last details, but once we do get the final version, we will be scheduling that for you. The big picture here is that what we've been doing with the canal isn't really going to change too much from what this MOU says. Dollar commitments, maintenance responsibilities from that level. So it doesn't represent a change for us, but what it does do is it starts to unify the administration of the canal. So that'll be coming on your agendas here in the next couple months, probably. There is an employee barbecue tomorrow. We are going to just recognize some years of service for some employees. It's been a challenging year, and any chance we get to thank the employees, we're going to do. If you want to stop by and say hi, 12:30 is when we're going to have a few remarks. So if you're interested and you're available to come by, then that would be great. And then last, but for me certainly not least, I will be on vacation starting tomorrow afternoon through the 13th. Shocking news, right? Oh, that's right. Yes. I do have one other thing. Sorry. I could have just let you do this one too. In process for the public affairs consultant, we have gotten those proposals and looked at them as a committee, including Alan Cady, but also staff. And I think we have a recommended narrowed down list of 3 firms to look at. I just wanted to confirm with council, though, that council's still good with Katie and Al working with staff on doing that interview process. Is that still all systems go? Okay. I think it was just side note. We got some initial proposals. A couple of them we did some follow up on. I'm really glad we did. In one case, I think it really helped us understand sort of the quality of one proposal, and on the other one, it helped us understand the lack thereof. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm glad we took an extra 2 weeks for that, but we are ready to get some interviews set up for that. So that's all I have.
City clerk? City attorney? No report. All right. Unless there's nothing more?
I move to adjourn.
All right. Without objection, we are adjourned. We'll see everybody next time. And we do have two more meetings in August. No, but and we're skipping Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, staff, I wanted to let you guys know that I will be going on vacation tomorrow, in case you hadn't heard.
What? This is really
Surprise.
shocking information.